In the shadows of a retirement home in rural Vermont, 87-year-old Margaret Wilson sat alone. January 12, 2023, the day marked exactly 1 year since she'd spoken to another human being for more than 5 minutes. The staff were kind but overwhelmed. Her children lived across the country. The crushing weight of isolation had dimmed her once bright eyes. That same morning, Dr. James Chen stood outside the facility, a folder tucked under his arm containing what some would call a radical proposal. After 20 years studying animal social behaviors at the University of Michigan, he'd developed a program that seemed almost too simple. What if we cared for our elders the way animals care for theirs? The retirement home's director, Sarah Mills, had laughed when she first heard his pitch. Animals? You want us to act like animals? But desperation breeds openness. The facility had the highest depression rates in the state. She agreed to a 6-month trial. No one expected what happened next. The first lesson came from elephants. In the wild, these massive creatures form intricate family structures where no member gets left behind. When an elderly elephant weakens, the herd doesn't abandon them. They adjust their pace, provide physical support, and ensure their inclusion in all activities. The Elephant Protocol, as Dr. Chen called it, restructured the facility's daily operations. Residents were no longer left alone for extended periods. Staff and volunteers created a rotation, ensuring Margaret and others received meaningful human contact at least 6 times daily. They weren't quick check-ins, but genuine interactions. By February 3rd, Margaret spoke her first full sentence in months. The birds came back early this year, simple words that signaled a profound shift. Meanwhile, across the country in San Diego on February 20th, marine biologist Teresa Rodriguez was introducing a group of nursing students to her research on dolphin care behaviors. Dolphins routinely support injured pod members, sometimes swimming underneath them for hours to prevent drowning. Most striking was their use of gentle physical touch, not just for practical support, but as emotional comfort. When the nursing students brought these lessons back to their elder care rotations, they implemented what became known as the dolphin touch. Professional boundaries remained intact, but deliberate moments of appropriate physical connection, a hand on a shoulder, sitting close enough for arms to touch during conversations, became standard practice. For 92-year-old Robert Jenkins, a World War II veteran who had refused most human contact since his wife's death, this approach proved transformative. The nursing student assigned to him, Michael Patel, started by simply sitting beside him each day, their shoulders barely touching as Michael read the newspaper aloud. No demands for conversation, no rushed interactions. By March 15th, Robert began reaching for Michael's hand when difficult memories surfaced. Dr. Chen's research continued unfolding across multiple facilities. In Chicago's North Side Care Center on April 2nd, the staff implemented what they called dog dynamics, communication patterns inspired by how canines interact with humans. Dogs listen with their entire bodies, displaying endless patience as they adjust to their owner's needs and moods. Staff members were trained to adopt similar behaviors, maintaining eye contact, positioning themselves at the same level as seated residents, and most importantly, listening without interruption or shows of impatience. For residents with dementia who often repeated the same stories, this practice proved particularly powerful. Evelyn Santos, a 79-year-old former concert pianist with advancing dementia, had become increasingly agitated during care interactions. Her caregiver, Thomas Washington, began applying the dog dynamics principles, kneeling at eye level during conversations, responding to repeated stories with the same interest shown the first time, and matching his energy to hers rather than imposing his pace. The change was remarkable. By April 18th, Evelyn's medication for anxiety had been reduced by half. Perhaps the most controversial protocol emerged from Dr. Chen's study of tortoises. These creatures move with deliberate slowness, living at a pace utterly different from our rushed human world. In the Sunset Years facility in Phoenix on May 7th, Director of Care Amanda Johnson implemented what staff initially mocked as tortoise time. All watches were removed during shifts. Staff were prohibited from using the phrase "just a minute" or showing signs of hurry. Care plans were restructured to prioritize quality over efficiency. What surprised everyone was how this approach actually improved functional outcomes. When 84-year-old Frank Miller wasn't rushed through his morning routine, he began handling more self-care tasks independently, regaining dignity along with dexterity. By early June, residents who had been withdrawn began emerging from their shells. Activities that had been attended by the same handful of participants suddenly drew crowds. Something fundamental had shifted in the atmosphere. The final element of Dr. Chen's program drew from feline behavior. Cats are meticulous about grooming, spending up to 50% of their waking hours on personal maintenance. This behavior isn't merely about cleanliness, it's tied to emotional well-being and dignity. On June 12th in Vermont, Margaret Wilson experienced what she later described as the day I became human again. The facility had transformed its approach to resident hygiene and appearance. Rather than rushed, functional bathing treated as a task to complete, grooming became an unhurried ritual of dignity. Margaret's hair was washed and styled the way she'd worn it for decades. Her nails were manicured. Staff helped her select an outfit that reflected her personal style rather than ease of dressing. When she looked in the mirror, she recognized herself for the first time in years. Dr. Chen's 6-month trial produced data that shocked the medical community. Depression rates dropped by 64%. Falls decreased by 40%. Medication use for anxiety and agitation declined by nearly half. Even more surprising, staff burnout decreased despite the initially more time-intensive protocols. But statistics tell only part of the story. The true revolution occurred in countless small moments, like when Robert Jenkins, who had been mute for so long, began telling Michael about the day he met his wife in 1946, or when Evelyn played piano again at the facility's July 4th celebration, her fingers remembering what her mind had forgotten. By late summer, the approach had spread to 37 facilities nationwide. On September 10th, Dr. Chen testified before a congressional committee on elder care. We've designed our care systems around efficiency, liability, and medical outcomes, he told them. But we've forgotten that to be human is to need more than medication and meals. Our elders require what we all require: connection, dignity, patience, touch, and the freedom to move at their own pace. Critics called the approach unsustainable and overly idealistic. Insurance companies questioned coverage for what they termed non-medical interventions. Then, on October 21st, a short video emerged on social media. It showed Margaret Wilson seated in the facility's garden, surrounded by a group of children from a local elementary school. She was teaching them how to identify bird calls. Her hands gestured animatedly as she spoke. The children leaned in, captivated. Margaret's face, which months earlier had shown only blank resignation, radiated purpose. The video went viral, accumulating 20 million views in a week. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know about the animal method. As the year drew to a close, Dr. Chen reflected on what they'd learned. The most powerful realization wasn't that animals had special secrets to elder care. Rather, what animals naturally do is what humans have always known but forgotten in our rush toward efficiency and technology. We need each other. We need touch. We need patience. We need dignity. And perhaps most importantly, we need to be seen, truly seen, by others. In December, Margaret Wilson celebrated her 88th birthday surrounded by new friends. When asked what had changed for her, she didn't mention policies or protocols. Instead, she said simply, "Someone remembered I was still here." The revolution continues, quiet but unstoppable, one human connection at a time. Facilities across the country are discovering that medicine alone cannot heal the deepest wounds of aging. Sometimes the most advanced approach is also the most ancient, treating each other with the instinctive care that animals have never forgotten. As for Dr. Chen, he's already looking toward new horizons. "We've only scratched the surface," he says. "The animal kingdom holds countless more lessons, if we're humble enough to learn." In elder care facilities implementing these principles, something extraordinary has emerged. Residents aren't just surviving longer, they're living with renewed purpose. Staff members report finding joy again in work that had become mechanical, and families who had mourned their elders as already gone are rediscovering the people they'd thought lost to time. The most powerful medicine, it seems, isn't found in pills, but in presence. The wisdom wasn't new, just forgotten. And sometimes, to move forward, we must look to those who've been getting it right all along, even when they walk on 4 legs instead of 2. If you enjoyed it, then watch our next video shown on screen.